What's up, everybody, and welcome to another crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills, joined by John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, and we're going to get you ready for an AFC East showdown on Sunday with a little crossover discussion to really dive into this football game against two teams here that are having good seasons. So looking forward to this discussion today. But first of all, crossover Thursday is presented by our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is so much fun and it's easy to play. There's no competing with other players. It's just you versus the projections available. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. It can literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It is that easy. We love PrizePicks, and we know that you will too. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Well, John, this is the first time that we've had a chance to speak since the start of the season, and the New York Jets, they're 5-3, and that is pretty significant based on some of the expectations for them and what recent history has told us about the Jets. It doesn't look like the same old Jets so far, looking good on defense and a lot of things to be excited about on the offensive side of the football. So, John, welcome in, and looking forward to chatting about this game with you.
Joe, I was thinking about this. We've been doing this, probably 3 to 4 years. This is the first time I think we've ever had a game where both teams were over 500. It's very exciting. This is also the first time we've done it on YouTube. You look great, by the way, Joe, today. I just want to mention that. But I think this is and it's just like we all thought. We all thought the Bills would be at the top of the AFC, and we all thought the Jets would be, maybe not, but it's a very exciting game. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, right now the Jets are the first wild card, right? 5-3,
right.
Number 2 in the division, and the Bills haven't won a division game yet. So this is a big one. So, John, as we start our conversation here, really focusing in on the biggest story for each team, I'll let you go first here. What's on your mind with the Jets in this game?
Well, Joe, I think right now it's Zach Wilson, second-year quarterback. Even though the Jets are off to a good start, 5-3, there have been some questions about Zach Wilson so far. He had a tough game against New England last Sunday, threw for over 350 yards. In fact, his first 300-yard game in the NFL, but threw 3 interceptions. And it's one thing to throw an interception. There are interceptions, and then there are really bad interceptions. And all 3 of the interceptions Zach Wilson threw last Sunday, they were of the ugly variety. And there was one right before the half that really swung momentum of the game. The Jets were in control of the game. They were up by a touchdown at that point. So you want to put points on the board, but more importantly, you just don't want to make a big mistake. Now, New England was only able to convert that into a field goal, and the Jets actually had a pick 6 wiped off by a roughing the passer penalty. But this game was a struggle for Zach Wilson. But even before then, you could argue that the Jets were winning games either in spite of Zach Wilson, or Zach Wilson was kind of irrelevant because the Jets were really working their run game during their 4-game winning streak. Breece Hall was having a phenomenal rookie year. Breece Hall was at a pace where he was going to be right in the mix for offensive rookie of the year, and the defense was dominating. So even though the Jets had a 4-game winning streak, now the first of those wins was against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where Zach Wilson led a fourth quarter comeback and played very well. But after that, he had a game against Miami where, he was okay. He didn't do anything too great, didn't do anything too terrible. Then he had 2 games that were really rough. And right now, Zach Wilson, he's having issues in the pocket. He's getting mixed up on some of his reads. He's been kind of indecisive. He's been very quick to bail on the pocket. And this Bills defense, this is not the defense you want to see come to town when you're a young quarterback struggling. This is a top-notch defense, as I'm sure all your listeners know. So how Zach Wilson responds to this test is this top story for the Jets. And the Jets have a bye after this, so whatever happens on Sunday, we're either going to be talking about really good things for 2 weeks, or we're going to have 2 weeks where there's going to be a lot of dissecting what's going wrong with this young quarterback. Now, Joe, let me turn the question to you. Buffalo Bills off to a great start. What's the top storyline?
Well, first, if I could comment just a little bit there, and I want to talk more about Zach Wilson through my own lens in the next segment, but I will say this because you mentioned a 3-interception game for Zach Wilson against the Patriots, and a game that the Jets only lost by 5 points, right? They were in this thing, and like you said there, they were in control for a decent amount of it. The turning point for Josh Allen in his career was a 3-interception game against the Patriots, where they lost by 6 points, and that included a blocked punt return for a touchdown for New England, and also a situation where later in the game, Josh Allen, he took a hit and was concussed and wasn't able to finish, and the Bills had 2 game-winning drive opportunities after that Josh Allen couldn't be a part of. And that was, if you ask Josh Allen, he'll tell you that was a turning point in his career. That's when he learned that he needed to change his approach to the way that he plays football. And for the Jets, I'm sure that the lessons that Josh learned against New England are very similar to what they hope Zach Wilson will learn coming out of that game against New England. Like I said, more thoughts on Zach Wilson coming up in the next segment. But when I do look at this game from the Bills' angle and what the biggest story for Buffalo is, I think you have to mention the 3 new additions to the roster that have come this week, whether that's the activation of Tre'Davious White or the trades that they made for Nyheim Hines and Dean Marlowe. And so real quick on each of these players, Nyheim Hines obviously comes over as a really explosive receiving back that provides a lot of value as a punt returner. And the Bills invested a second-round pick in James Cook, and he's been okay, really kind of a slow start, has kind of flashed a little bit more in recent weeks, but I don't think he's necessarily shown enough where you feel like you have that number 2 to go with Devin Singletary, and you want that receiving skill set. You want that punt return ability. And so whether it's the punt return dynamic that he provides, and he's been very good at punt returns throughout his career with the Colts, over 110 fielded punts, only 2 muffs, and nearly 12 yards average per punt return. He's very good in that capacity. And you think about what he's going to offer the offense as a receiving back, you've now inserted a tried and true veteran in Nyheim Hines to replace 2 rookies in James Cook and Khalil Shakir, who was handling your punt return duties. And not that either of those players have not played well, but I think for a team like Buffalo that has Super Bowl aspirations this year, the less you can rely on rookies, the better, right? And allow them to kind of onboard and evolve, as opposed to being that number 2 receiving back, as opposed to being that lead punt returner. Now you have Nyheim Hines to do that. Let's see what he looks like this week against the Jets. What type of opportunity is he going to get? Then you go to Dean Marlowe, a player that Sean McDermott had for a couple of years in Carolina. They had him in Buffalo until 2020. So basically a 5-year stretch that Dean Marlowe was with Sean McDermott, knows the system. And obviously he left in free agency after the 2020 season. He certainly had an opportunity to be a starter somewhere elsewhere. In Buffalo, that wasn't going to happen, right, with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So he goes and kind of looks for that opportunity, but he finds himself back now that the Bills have had some injuries at safety. Micah Hyde's out for the year. Jordan Poyer is week to week right now with an elbow injury. I doubt he plays against the Jets. And now you have a tried and true player to step into your defense that knows the team, that knows the scheme, that you feel good about in terms of solidifying your safety depth with a guy that's been around this team for a lot of years, to be quite honest. And then the return of Tre'Davious White. Does he play this week? I'm not sure, but it's soon. And you want to talk about significant midseason additions to a football team. How about an all-pro corner in Trey White? That's going to be a big boost to the Bills. And the players that have stepped in since have played well, whether it's Dane Jackson or the 2 rookies, Kyer Elam and Christian Benford. But Trey White's an all-pro. Trey White's a guy that takes away the football. Trey White's a guy that can shadow another team's number 1 wide receiver. I'm sure the Jets are enjoying what a number 1 corner is like in Sauce Gardner to this point. And the Bills just got that back right now, and that's only going to help an already very, very good defense. And so, to me, the biggest storyline for the Bills in this game has to be the 3 new additions and how they can help the football team starting this week. Whether you're looking to pop the question, have a milestone to celebrate, or want to let your love sparkle, BlueNile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, BlueNile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. BlueNile has helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring. Their easy online tools let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. And maybe you're just looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate or celebrate a special milestone, but you're having trouble choosing. Don't worry. BlueNile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7 available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. You can shop stress-free at BlueNile, 100% satisfaction guarantee, and all orders are insured and shipped for free in discreet packaging. They also have some overnight shipping available if you're in a rush. So make your moment sparkle with BlueNile. Go to BlueNile.com and use code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BlueNile.com, code Locked On, to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, code Locked On. All right, John, let's now focus our conversation on the key matchup or matchups that can win the game for each team. And I said I wanted to talk a little bit about Zach Wilson. And this is where I'm going to do that, because I think this game will be defined by how Zach Wilson plays against the Bills defense. So that's my matchup. Zach Wilson against the Bills defense. There are some things that are troubling for me when I watch Zach Wilson and I study Zach Wilson, which I did on Tuesday. And let me stop right there, because I love this defense. I'm very impressed with this defense. I think number 2 in the NFL in limiting rushing yards per carry. They are limiting opposing quarterbacks to a passer rating of 76.7. That's phenomenal. They got the 3rd highest pressure rate in the NFL and the 5th lowest blitz rate. They're doing a lot of good stuff on defense. I like their weapons. I really do. Some elusive players that make me concerned as an opponent. The offensive line, injuries, you hate to see it, but I think if they had Elijah Vera Tucker and either Mekhi Becton or George Fant, you could feel good about that offensive line. But this team is going to go as far as Zach Wilson can take them. And Zach Wilson has to make changes in the way he plays the game for that to happen. And I know that they're 4-1 with him as the starting quarterback this year, and that says something. And maybe you get nervous about what the alternatives can be. But Zach Wilson's got to run the system, John. He's got to run the system. This is a system that guys like C.J. Beathard and Mike White at times and Nick Mullins and Jimmy Garoppolo, you can list a lot of quarterbacks that have had success in this system because they're willing to run it. And for Zach Wilson, obviously I studied him in depth at BYU, and you loved the off-script stuff. You loved what he was able to do in terms of extending plays and making throws down the field. And that's a great bonus. That's a great bonus for a quarterback to have. But you have to be willing to play within structure. And there are some metrics about Zach Wilson that have me greatly concerned. And the first one is his average time to throw, 3.19 seconds. That's the slowest trigger in the NFL for every quarterback not named Justin Fields. That's a problem for an offense that is predicated on free access, getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly, and relying on yards after catch. And they got the weapons to do it. They're just not having the quarterback that's going to pull the trigger and play within structure with consistency. He's holding onto the ball for 3.19 seconds. When he gets it out in under 2.5 seconds, which is a benchmark for quarterback play, 72% completion percentage, 88.4 passer rating. All right, we can live with that. When he's holding onto it over 2.5 seconds, keeping in mind he's averaging nearly 3.2, that completion percentage comes down to 41%. That passer rating comes down to 56.7%. Or not percent, but a rating, 56.7. That's the second worst passer rating in the NFL when holding onto the ball for over 2.5 seconds. Zach, why are you holding on to it? What are those conversations like between him and Coach LaFleur about the way he's approaching the ball game? And then you look at his vertical passing, right? You'd hold onto the football seemingly to push the ball down the field. Well, on throws where Zach Wilson throws it 20 yards or more down the field, he's 4 of 15 with 3 interceptions and a passer rating of 39.6, which is 3rd worst in the NFL. So if you're holding onto the football to throw it down the field, the results have to be better. And the last thing that I'll say is the pressure splits are insane to me, John. When he's kept clean, he's good. 73% completion percentage, 9.5 yards per attempt, passer rating of 109.4. That's phenomenal. When he's under pressure, 19% completion percentage, 3 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 7.1. That passer rating and that completion percentage under pressure, dead last in the NFL by huge margins. So for a Jets offensive line that is allowing a little too much pressure, right? He's facing pressure on 28% of dropbacks. That's 4th highest in the NFL. This is not adding up in a good way. And so is this going to be the turning point for Zach Wilson's career, coming off of what we just talked about with the Patriots and the lessons that can be learned there, and him starting to kind of reinvent himself? You can't major in minor components of the position, right? You have to play within structure, and the cherry on top is the outside of structure stuff. And so for Zach, he's talented. He's really talented. And if he can play within structure and use his dynamic playmaking ability otherwise to complement that, I think this can be a dangerous football team. But until that happens, it's hard to really buy in on this team because of the limitations that I think he's giving this offense. I like this. Like I said, the defense, I love it. The skill players really like it. My goodness, if you have Breece Hall, you're even better. Zach Wilson is going to define the success of this team, especially in a marquee game on Sunday against the Bills.
Joe, that was so insightful. I'm afraid I'm going to wake up tomorrow to an email and find out you're the new host of Locked On Jets, because that was a great breakdown. And you actually led the perfect segue into my matchups. I have two. I have one for both sides of the ball. And you talked about it. It's been one of the keys this season. Zach Wilson has not fared well under pressure. And I'm looking at this matchup at right tackle because the Jets are going to be playing Cedric Ogbuehi, a former first-round pick, but a guy who really has never lived up to his first-round status. And he's only in there because the Jets have had so many injuries at the tackle position. Mekhi Becton goes down. George Fant goes down. Max Mitchell, the rookie who's not even supposed to be playing, goes down. Then Elijah Vera Tucker. On the other side, you have Dwayne Brown go down. Fortunately, Dwayne Brown's back, at least providing some stability on the left side of the line. But when you have an offense that's struggling, and when you have a quarterback who's not playing well under pressure, you don't want to look and see a matchup of Cedric Ogbuehi versus Von Miller. This is the type of matchup that can really destroy a game for you. You want Zach Wilson to feel comfortable in this game. You want Zach Wilson, after a rough game against New England, to feel like his line's going to protect him. You want him to feel comfortable in the pocket, because there have been too many points this year, and you've said it perfectly, where Zach Wilson is bailing too early on the pocket. It feels like he's getting a little bit panicked when he's under pressure. And I look at this matchup, and it's one that could really be a problem for the Jets. And then I'm going to go to the other side of the ball. And it's kind of a weird matchup because usually you wouldn't take a quarterback versus a group of linebackers. But I look at Josh Allen versus the Jets linebackers, especially CJ Mosley, but you can also throw Quincy Williams, maybe even Quan Alexander into that mix. And the reason I'm going there is on the outside, at the receiver position, you got some really compelling matchups. I think Sauce Gardner versus Diggs is really interesting. I'm not sure who's going to emerge victorious in that matchup. DJ Reed, you also have playing really solid at the corner position for the Jets. Gabriel Davis, a receiver I really like, a receiver I was hoping the Jets would draft a couple of years ago. I don't know whether the Jets or Bills win that matchup, because I think that those are really interesting dynamics. I think that those could go either way, but I look at the middle of the field, and if there's been a weakness for the Jets this year on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's been at the linebacker position. CJ Mosley's played some good games, but he's not the guy he used to be in Baltimore. Quincy Williams is very up and down. Quincy Williams is what I call like a high variance player. There's, sometimes the guys are average because they're just they're kind of okay every week. Quincy Williams has games where he's great, and then he has games where he just runs himself out of every play. And I'm looking at the middle of the field. I think that they're going to have a tough time dealing with Dawson Knox. I think, to the extent the Bills will use their receivers out of the backfield, if Hines gets in there, they could have an issue. But also Josh Allen as a runner. There have been moments this year where this linebacker group for the Jets has had trouble against quarterbacks scrambling. I mean, there was one play week 2 against Jacoby Brissett, who's nowhere near Josh Allen's league as a runner. And Mosley essentially got juked out of the play. So I worry about Josh Allen's running ability against them. I worry about the Bills to the extent they're going to be able to game plan to isolate their backs and tight ends against these linebackers who have their moments against the run, but are really not strong cover guys. I think the Jets, I don't want to say the Jets are going to control the outside, but I like the way the Jets match up outside a little bit better. You're not going to have Javelin Guidry one-on-one against Stephon Diggs like you did last year in the Meadowlands. But the middle of the field, I mean, that's a huge area that I think this Buffalo offense can exploit. So those are my key matchups, and essentially they're both matchups that I think are problem areas for the Jets, that somebody's going to have a big game unexpectedly for the Jets to win this game.
John, we're 20 minutes into this conversation, and we haven't mentioned Quinnen Williams yet, and we have to, because this guy's absolutely broken out. I think he's right there. He's right there in the premier elite interior defensive lineman in the NFL. Quinnen Williams is in that conversation, and that's what the Jets envisioned when they picked him so high in the draft. But for Bills fans that maybe haven't watched the Jets much this year, Can you talk about the impact and problems that he presents for another team?
Joe, it's funny because his first couple of years, you could not say he was bad. He was a solid player. He was an above average player. I think in 2020, if he had not gotten hurt, he may have made the Pro Bowl. He was right on the cusp. And I was like the king of Locked On Jets. I kept saying, because there were lots of Jets fans who were disappointed. They were expecting an all-pro guy. They were expecting a game-changing presence on the defensive line. Okay, maybe he's not going to get there, but he's still part of the solution. This year, he's broken out. This year, he's been completely unblockable. And we talked about the success this Jets defensive line is having. Going into the season, you knew they had a lot of talent. John Franklin Myers is a very good player. He plays both inside and outside. Carl Lawson, they got back, having a solid season. Sheldon Rankins, a guy they signed last year from New Orleans in free agency, did not have a great year last year, but has really bounced back this year. But Quinton Williams has just been, he's been on, like I said, he's been unblockable. I mean, there was a game against Green Bay. He filled up the stat sheet in a way a defensive tackle usually doesn't. A couple of sacks, 3 quarterback hits, a couple tackles for loss. He even blocked a field goal in that game, Joe. He's been, I don't want to say Aaron Donald, but he's been maybe the half step below that this year. He's been, and I don't say that lightly. He has been out of this world good. He's been a guy who's just drawn attention. And I think what's really helped this Jets defense, and I'm going to mention another guy, is the way Sauce Gardner's played. Because when you get that type of play at the front of your defense, but then you also have the coverage skills of a Sauce Gardner who is not giving anything up in coverage so far this year. Now, Diggs is going to be a unique match. Diggs is going to be a tougher matchup than he's had the last couple of weeks. So, I don't want to be too boastful, because I think Stephon Diggs, could have a little bit of more success against Sauce than other receivers have had. But when you have, it's amazing like how just a couple of players completely change the dynamics of a defense, because you have a lot of the same pieces that were there a year ago, but Quinton Williams has elevated his game, and him taking his game to that next level has elevated this Jets defense. And then you stick a cover guy like Sauce Gardner back there, and he can lock down the other team's best receiver. It's turned the Jets from one of the league's worst defenses into one of their best defenses.
Yeah, it's been cool to watch Robert Saleh get that defense together. I knew he didn't forget how to coach defense overnight there with what happened. He just didn't have the horses, man.
What's funny, Joe, is last year I heard everybody was complaining about the scheme. The scheme's right. The scheme's bad. It's amazing how much better the scheme looks when you have players to run the scheme.
It's Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's, right? That's what we say in the scouting world. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football and the start of the new basketball season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. It's BetOnline, and it's where the game starts. So, John, they make us do predictions for the game. And so that's a new part of what we have to do in our crossover Thursday discussions. And so I don't mind. I'll give you my thoughts here on the result of this game first, and then we'll get to you. I've said everything I need to say about Zach Wilson, right? And is this the moment? Is this the game? Is this the get right game against a really good Bills defense? I don't think it's going to be. And I worry even more about an identity crisis for Zach Wilson, because like I said earlier, I can only imagine what the conversations are like, where it's a very clear ask of what the Jets want their quarterback to do. This is the Shanahan system, John. You realize how much Shanahan's system is out there. We know what they want to accomplish. And then I'm at the Senior Bowl this past year, and I'm watching, the Jets offense run an entire team down there. And it's very clear the principles of what they want their quarterback to do. And so, with Zach Wilson kind of being in an identity crisis as a player, I think, and I think there's some urgency for that getting twisted around. I don't know that this is going to be that game where it all comes together for him. That's a big ask against a really good Bills team. I think I don't need to sit here and give the Bills any flowers. I think we understand what they're capable of on both sides of the football. Now, the Jets defense is something to talk about here. Like I've mentioned, they're good. You've mentioned they're good. And we're talking about a top 6 defense in the league right now in terms of yards. They're top 10 in both pass defense and rush defense. And I think the bigger numbers are some that I've already mentioned here. The 3.8 yards per carry allowed, second best in the league. The passer rating of 76.7, that's phenomenal. the pressure rate, third best in the league, and they're getting pressure without having to blitz. I mean, there's some good stuff going on here, and we haven't even seen this team with, Jermaine Johnson yet, who's kind of been banged up and not really available, and I think that's going to make them even better. And obviously, Jordan Whitehead's a great addition. LaMarcus Joyner, those guys to stabilize in the safety position, which matters for this type of defense, which there's a lot of parallels schematically and structurally between the Bills and Jets and what they like to do defensively. I don't think it's going to be enough. I don't. I think the way the Bills played in the second half against Green Bay is going to really motivate this team, where it was a great first half. I think the Bills played phenomenal in the first half against Green Bay, and that certainly gave them the buffer that they needed to kind of cruise to a 10-point win. But offensively, that team, the team I watched in the second half against Green Bay was not the Bills. And I think they're going to be really hungry to come out and really kind of get right and play the style of football that they want to. And I think they're going to be stressed. I think the Bills offense is going to stress this defense, this good Jets defense, in ways that they haven't been yet. And so there's some fun matchups, and I think the Jets are on the up, but I think this is a big ask for them on Sunday. I like the Bills in this one, 31-17.
Joe, when you come off a bad loss like the Jets are, you're looking for what's known as a get-right game. And I look at this matchup, and it's almost like a get-wrong game to me. Like, this is the last team you want to see coming into the Meadowlands. First of all, just because the Bills are probably the best team in the NFL right now, but also stylistically, this is just such a tough matchup. I mean, we talked about Zach Wilson's struggles under pressure so far this year. So you're going up against what, for my money, could be the best defense in the NFL. I actually would like this matchup better for the Jets if they were having a typical Jets season where maybe they had 1 to 2 wins at this point, because then you could talk yourself into a scenario where maybe the Bills are looking past them, and it's a home divisional game. Those things always have wild card. Those things are always a bit of a wild card. I look at this, and to me, one of the things you look to when you're picking a game is if both teams play their A game, who's going to win? And I think that's clearly Buffalo in this one. I think for the Jets to win, something out of the ordinary is going to happen. It might be Zach Wilson having the best game of his career when he's facing this much adversity heading into the game. Maybe it's just Josh Allen playing an uncharacteristic bad game. Maybe it's a score that you get on special teams. Jets have had good special teams this year. They played awful last week. So maybe the special teams bounce back and you get a score on them, or you get a defensive score. Something weird needs to happen for the Jets to win this game, but I don't like Zach Wilson going up against this pass rush with this patchwork offensive line. I think the Jets defense can contain Buffalo's offense, but offensively, it's just a struggle for the Jets. You said the word identity, and without Breece Hall, I'm not sure what this offense's identity is, and I think they might be able to figure it out over the course of the season. They have a bye coming up, so maybe the extra week will help them figure some things out, but I just think this is the wrong opponent at the wrong time for the New York Jets. So I think I'm going Buffalo 20, Jets 10.
If you're looking for an X factor, because I think we had a good conversation, and then it was very much like, back to the Bills are going to win the game, which we both agree. I think if there's that X factor, you kind of mentioned some things to go right for the Jets to win this game. I go to turnovers. I do, and the Jets have been very good at forcing turnovers. They've forced a turnover in every game this year. I'm not sure that another team in the league can say that they've done that. 12 turnovers forced in 8 games. And the Bills, for as good as they've been, they have to do a better job protecting the football. They're committing a turnover on 16.4% of their drives this year. That's 4th worst in the NFL. So, John, that's a talking point I'd run with you for the rest of the week if I were you, because that's how you get it done. And the metric outside of points for and points against that is most correlative to winning and losing throughout the history of football is turnovers. And so the Bills have to be aggressive and play their game, but it has to come with taking care of the football. So that's something I'll be definitely monitoring on Sunday afternoon.
Well, Joe, it was great chatting with you as always, and I look forward to doing this once again later in the season when the Jets head up to Buffalo.
Yeah, I appreciate it, John. We get to do this a couple times every year. Maybe there's a third one this year. We'll see.
How much fun would that be? Oh my God, that would be. I don't even want to dream of that, Joe.
Well, yeah, you got to do it, right? You got to do it 1 week at a time. But the win over Miami is a big one that the Jets have on their resume. The Bills don't have a win over Miami, and they certainly don't want to fall to 0-2 in the division at this point. So there's a lot on the line here on Sunday afternoon, and John, thanks again for a great conversation. Thanks to everyone who joined us. We would love it if you took a second to rate, review, share, and subscribe to Locked On Bills and Locked On Jets. For John Butchko, I'm Joe Marino. We look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.